Hi, I'm Doug, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can make one of these card and photo display stands. They are easy to make with limited tools and just a few small pieces of wood. Despite how easy they are to make, they look and feel great, they work really well, and they'd be perfect for gifts or for craft fairs. Let's get started. For each stand you want to make, you'll need a 1/2-inch board that is 2.5 inches by 2 inches or a little over, and a 1/4-inch board that is about the same dimensions. For this build, I am using cherry and walnut. For tools and supplies, you'll need a jigsaw with a tilting base and a clean cutting blade, either wood glue or CA glue, double-sided tape, a few clamps, a compass and some sandpaper, wood finish, measuring and marking tools, and a playing card you don't mind cutting up. While not absolutely necessary, a random orbital sander or other power sander will make the sanding process much easier. You may want to have a small saw on hand, but this is also optional. Take the 1/2-inch piece and mark it 1 3/4 inches from the back, and then 1 3/16 from the back. Make the same marks on the opposite side of the top. Next, set your compass to 5 inches and connect the inside marks. For the outside curve, set the compass to 7 inches and then connect the remaining 2 marks. With the lines marked, we need to set up for this cut. Finding a good way to clamp this small piece might be a bit of a challenge. If you have a vise, you can use that to clamp the work. Just make sure you put another piece of similar width on the opposite side of the vise so it doesn't rack when you tighten it. If you don't have a vise, you can just use double-sided tape to hang the piece off the edge of your table. The tape will hold better after pressure is applied, so I used a clamp to ensure a good bond. I'm not sure if all jigsaws have tilting bases, but both of mine do, and hopefully yours does as well. To make an angled cut, you loosen the screws on the base, and then you can eyeball an angle at around 10 degrees using the markings on the saw. You may need to slide the base back or forward to release the hard stops on the base. You'll want the blade angled away from the back of the workpiece when you're cutting. Install a good quality blade. I'm using a Bosch Clean for Wood blade for this cut. If your jigsaw has a setting that controls how aggressive the cut is, turn it down so you have the maximum control over the cut. I used a higher speed for this cut, but feel free to do some test cuts to find out which speed works for you. Once you're all set up, carefully cut just on the outside of the first line. If you're having trouble balancing the saw, you can use double-sided tape and another piece of similar thickness to help stabilize the saw. Next, with the saw in the same position, cut the remaining curve. When you're done with that cut, you can remove the double-sided tape. You might have some uncut fibers at the end of the front piece, and you can remove these with sandpaper. Just be careful to not flatten out the curve like I did here. If needed, you can refine the curve some and clean up any cut marks, but a good quality blade will mean that there is very little to clean up. To test the fit, just slide the 2 pieces together. There should be a fairly tight seam. While the gap will hide some errors, try to get a good fit. Next, sand a very slight roundover on the mating edges. Before gluing the top parts to the bottom, make sure the faces that will be glued together are flat. Just a little sanding on a flat surface may be all you need to do here. I'd suggest gluing the back first and using some small clamps to hold it in place. Once you have that situated, clean up any of the squeeze out from the curved area. Before applying glue to the front, cut the playing card into strips. Next, apply glue to the front of the stand. Be sure to keep this aligned the correct way during the glue-up. To size the gap, use 2 of the playing card pieces. I found that 2 cards gave me the gap I was looking for more than just 1 card. Press them firmly toward the back, and then clamp the front down. Remove the cards before any glue squeeze-out can set up. After a minute or two, run a card through sideways a few times to remove any remaining glue. I'm using wood glue here, but you can also use CA glue, also known as super glue, as long as you're careful to not get any squeeze out into the gap. If you do, it is very difficult to remove. After the glue has set up, scrape away any squeeze out. While you can sand away this extra material on the base, it will go a lot faster if you use a saw to cut closer to the curve. Getting the base fully flush with the top can be done with just some patience and a piece of sandpaper. However, if you have a power sander, this process will go much faster. If you don't have a vise, you can just hold the sander with one hand and the piece with the other. Start with an aggressive grit and keep sanding until the base is fully flush with the top. Take your time and don't worry too much. With the exception of those initial curved cuts, this project is pretty forgiving. Give the stand a once-over, and if you identify any problem areas, you can address them now. You can see here I'm using sandpaper to open up a slightly uneven gap on one side. Move up a grit and take your time to ensure all saw marks and sanding marks from the previous step have been removed. I also applied a round over at this step by carefully rolling the pieces on the sander. If that makes you nervous, you can do that step with hand sanding. Move up to a finish grit like 220 and sand for your near final finish. Using sandpaper or hand sander, apply a very slight easing of the sharp edges on the top and bottom. You can also do any final touch-up to the bevel around the opening or on the sides. Once you are done sanding, apply a finish of your choice. I love the look of oil on wood, so I'm using Danish oil here. I applied finish a few times over the stands and let it sit a short bit before wiping off any excess finish. Once the finish is dry, you can put the stand to use. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch this. I hope you found it enjoyable, and if you did, hit the thumbs up and be sure to subscribe if you'd like to see other videos like this. Until next time, I'll see you later.